Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Picks and Sticks podcast, a fun music podcast where four great friends talk about the music, bands, and songs that they love. I'm Mauro.
I'm Gordo.
I'm Cecil.
And I'm Huff.
And this is Picks and Sticks. On today's episode of the podcast, we bring you 10 great songs from the band Pink Floyd. How's it going today, boys?
Oh, really good, lad. Really good, yeah.
Excellent.
I'm good, except for the 30 minutes we just spent sound checking.
Hey, got to make it sound professional, you know. Fake it till you make it.
Yeah, well, the content might be bunk, but the
energy is through the roof. Sorry.
That's right,
that's
buddy.
right.
Yeah, that's right.
Solid 10.
Yeah.
So, Huff, why don't you run us through how we come to our 10 great songs?
Yeah, so there's clearly four of us. We each come up with a top 20 list, so we rank them 1 to 20. So, of course, that gives us 80 songs, and then what we do is we put them through the patented Picks and Sticks algorithm, and it spits out a top 10 list for us based on a ranking system that is definitely proprietary. I cannot share that. So yeah, that's basically the way that it works. Sometimes it's easier to do the top 20 than other, and I would suggest this was probably the most difficult for me anyway. And I think, judging from our earlier conversations, everybody would agree. Just probably different reasons, but we'll get to that here momentarily.
Right on. Yeah, I find that when I was ranking my top 20 for this band in particular, there's so much diversity in the stuff that they do, and they started out being, psychedelic, which, led some of their songs to be 20 minutes long and some bizarre noise and just some weird stuff. So the listening time was definitely increased over the past few podcasts we've done.
Yeah,
but
I would agree.
Great band, great material.
Yeah, you don't realize till you get into it, and you kind of forget what's all there, and it's not even just the number of albums, because they do have a vast collection as it is, but then once you realize how long some of those albums are, it gets a little bit tedious sometimes. But I quite enjoyed it. Maybe we'll do a quick introduction in terms of experience with the band. And for me, I've been a Pink Floyd fan for a long time, and probably since I was about 15 years old. And I've been very fortunate to see Pink Floyd live a couple of times. Unfortunately, not with Roger Waters. So I saw them in '87 in Toronto on the Momentary Lapse of Reason tour. Then I saw them again in '94 on the Division Bell tour in Edmonton. Mauro, you were there with me.
I was.
And then you know what? I was lucky enough to see Roger Waters when he was doing the Wall tour. I went down to LA with my cousin and saw him in 2010. So I would say, in terms of knowledge of the band, I would say it's pretty good. My love for the band is there, and as I think I've said on other podcasts, has really ignited that passion for this band. And for me personally, I loved this exercise. So Mauro, I'll throw it to you. Maybe talk about where you are at in terms of your familiarity with the band and your experience.
Well, as I was saying before we came on air live, I don't remember the first song I had heard or the first album I owned. I do have an old copy of Dark Side of the Moon on vinyl downstairs.
Beauty.
So I would suggest that's the first Pink Floyd I ever owned. But saying that, probably my biggest exposure to Pink Floyd back in the day was the movie The Wall. Mm-hmm. And it had a huge impact on me. It's quite an interesting movie. I don't know that it's the most uplifting movie, but the music in it is obviously phenomenal. And then, from that, I sort of discovered some of the older stuff, which I really love, and some of the newer stuff, which I really love. Like you said, we went to the Division Bell concert, and I have a few of those songs in my top 20, just because I've always loved David Gilmour, his guitar playing. I've always loved his singing, and I'm not usually huge into lyrics. Mm-hmm. I'm more of a music guy. And the one thing about this band is that I do get into the lyrics because they're I don't know if they're profound. I'm not sure I even understand them, but they're very interesting and they're quite good. So, Roger Waters was, in my opinion, more of an artist than a musician, if you look at his body of work. But yeah, that's sort of my familiarity.
Yeah, and what makes it interesting, you touched on it, that this band is really interesting. That when you talk about lyrics, the early years there was the Syd Barrett lyrics, which are a little bit different, and then you've got that period where both Roger Waters and David Gilmour, and I know that some of the other guys, Richard Wright and Nick Mason, did chip in with some lyrics here and there, probably, but very, very limited. So generally, we can say that there were three, lyricists, if you will, within the band. So, and then add on top of that, there'll be different guys singing different songs. So it is. I don't even know how you can kind of capture that in words to be able, when you think about how different they are, and also thinking of, starting in 1967 and going, really straight through. Well, from 1967, I mean, they did 12 albums in 16 years. Like, think about that. 12 albums in 16 years. One was a double album, and then you throw in, there was a couple of compilations and some of those things in there, right? So, I mean, that's a shitload of material and a bunch of different lyricists and a bunch of different things. So there you have sort of the two guys, if you will, that were familiar with the band and have, various degrees of listening experience, if you will. Now we're going to kind of throw it, to Gordon Cecil, and Gordo, I'll start with you. Tell me about your familiarity and the painstaking process. Perhaps tell me about the process, because I know that you're not overly familiar with the band.
All right, brother. I'd love to tell you it was daunting, to say the least.
Fair.
I've been aware of their hits for forever, right? I think everyone is, but I hadn't really dug deep into the catalog. They were this band that my friends, like older brothers, used to listen to. I missed the boat, so I felt like I was just too young. Maybe the lyrics were too deep. I'm not sure, but they just didn't appeal to me. I was listening to like Zeppelin and stuff. When guys were smoking weed, listening to Floyd. So I just didn't get them. So I approached this a few different ways. The first time I was doing some work around the house and I just had on the background. That didn't work at all. So I'm like, all right. It's too deep for that. So I'm like, I tried listening to it while I'm driving. Well, that was even worse. They're not a driving band. They're not a road trip band. So I'm like, how do I do this? So yeah, I ended up doing what I think most people finally discover. You listen to them late at night by yourself with headphones in the dark room. You're like, oh, okay. I get this a little more now. I won't say that I'm like a huge fan of the band still, but I do have a much bigger appreciation of how good musicians they are. They're great songwriters. I did find they had a lot of filler to get through. For every Comfortably Numb, you have a song like Bike, which is not a good song.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
They definitely have different eras, like you said. It's not just the singers; it's the psychedelia. It's the, you hear a lot of Doors in their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I hear
early stuff for sure.
Some Sgt. Pepper's White Albums kind of stuff. Even a little Hendrix psychedelic time. But these guys are just off the charts, man, with how crazy they were in the 60s. What about you, Carlin?
Well, hang on. Before we get to that, I wanted to ask you, did you find it more difficult? And it never occurred to me. And as I was going through this again and again, you and I coming from, you obviously being much more experienced on drums, but both of us playing that instrument. Did you find it weird or you know, did you find it odd that, I mean, this band I wouldn't say has a great drummer. Like you don't listen to this and go, man, this drumming is off the charts. I mean, it's a percussion section that his job is to kind of keep time and throw in some simple fills. Like I can't think of anything, that pops out at me that goes, wow, that drumming's amazing. Whereas you can hear, like Mauro said, some great lyrics. David Gilmour on guitar is freaking phenomenal, and there's some crazy bass shit going on from Roger Waters. They're just, and even some of the keyboard stuff is incredible. There's nothing there that stands out from a drum perspective. What are your thoughts?
Well, he's obviously a pretty good drummer to put all this together. Playing along this would be hard, but I mean, I listen to a lot of other bands where they're not drum heavy, like maybe AC/DC's not known for their drumming, but they write great songs, right? This band, it finally dawned on me how you're kind of supposed to listen to them. And I could be wrong, but this worked for me. It's almost like you're listening to a movie soundtrack. And I mean, I know they did The Wall, but a lot of their stuff is like they're doing a soundtrack, like 20 minutes long, and they're setting a mood. They're not really playing a groove per se. Mm-hmm. And you almost have to imagine like a scene happening that you can't see that they're filling in for. And they're really good at setting that mood and that aura. And their instruments tend to blend together, whether it's the synth and the guitar solos kind of coming in and out of each other. They're really good at playing together like that. But yeah, you're right. They're definitely not going to be known for their drummer. Yeah. But I still think he does a great job of keeping this all together.
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that about just incorporating like a guitar solo that goes into a synth, because that's one of the things I noticed. We can talk about it later in the songs, but they do a really cool job of blending instruments together, where a solo will start with a guitar and take over with like a synthesizer or a saxophone. It's pretty spectacular.
And there's a choir in the background and shit. Like it's pretty crazy. Cecil, what's your experience with the band? I think you said that you owned 3 of their albums, but outside of that, it was pretty much unknown territory.
Mostly, I only know Wish You Were Here, The Wall, and then Dark Side of the Moon. Dark Side of the Moon, obviously most familiar, but I haven't never got into them. Like I tried when I was younger. I didn't mind. Comfortably Numb was the first song that stuck, got me in the feel, hit me in the feels. I find this with most bands, I fall in love. So anyways, last week I listened to a heckler. I only slept last night, really. I started listening to them at about 11 o'clock the other night. I didn't turn it off till 5 in the morning. I could not get off it. I listened to Umaguma start to finish, and I started to, somewhere along the way I started to get it. I'm not usually into big long songs, but like, the Doors, Jimi Hendrix, like they had some long tunes that roll pretty good. But anyways, a lot of housework. I found it was great housework music. Great yard work music. It's coming along at a good time in my life. I find I've been into the Grateful Dead for some time now too, so different band but similar in that there's a huge library, a lot of different songs you haven't heard of. Bands like this too, I find you got to work up you got to work up ear strength. You hear the song once and it doesn't stick. Like if you hear a song once and it catches, you're listening to like Jet or something, and then you're going to hate the song forever in about 5 minutes. But songs like this, you hear it and you can't hear it just once. You got to go through it again, like, what's that? Shine On Crazy Diamond. Like there's that little drop riff, do 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 in the beginning. I was just waiting for that today, like so much, I could not wait to hear that.
Wow, listen to this guy. He's a convert, man.
Oh, yeah, impressive. Die Hard. Look at my shirt.
Deeply impressed.
Pink Floyd
he's got the shirt on.
It's heavy, man. They reminded me. You know what they reminded me a lot of as I was listening to? Tool.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Progressive rock.
Just with the changes, the intricacies, and all that.
And say, I'll go back to Shine On You Crazy Diamond. Like that same riff I'm talking about, a song like Stinkfist or Tool, the opening riff, like it's fantastic. Yeah. You hear it a couple times, it's gone for the rest of the song. You know what I mean?
See, I've never thought of that. Maybe Tool was I don't want to say inspired, but they may have been an influence in some of the Pink Floyd was an influence in some of the stuff that they did.
Yeah, that's.
I think
don't know
that's just the style.
Yeah, turn
The
it up,
style is it because
change the
it's funny.
instruments, right? Maybe it sounds a little more similar if you just get them each band to switch instruments with each other.
Well, it's one thing to know the songs, and I knew a lot of them. It's another thing when you're like, okay, well now I'm going to pick 20 songs, and you realize that some of the songs are 12 and 15 minutes, and you're right. It can be a completely different song by halfway through. So it's more like a listening experience. You have to kind of be in a calm, cool mood. I found when I was listening, I'd listen for quite a while, and then I'd be relaxed. I'd be like, oh, I'm kind of chilled out now.
Yeah, there is a lot of that, and not to draw a parallel between Metallica and Pink Floyd, but when we were talking about the song One in our first episode, you talk about like how different it is, and there's like three sort of different pieces to that particular song. And that's basically the vast majority of Pink Floyd songs that, you walk in a room, depending on at what point of the song you step into, you could think that it was two or three different songs playing, and it might just be the exact same song, just going on and on.
Right.
One of the things that I found difficult about this, and we'll get into the list here in a second, but one of my favorite albums for whatever reason, and I've gone through a whole bunch of different stages, I suppose, in my Pink Floyd career, but one of my favorite albums is The Final Cut. Yet when I did my list, there was only one song from that album, and I think
I was the same.
Because and my take on it is, sort of, Dark Side of the Moon's a little bit different, but it's a concept album. Wish You Were Here is a bit of a concept album. I don't know if you'd call Animals that, but The Wall and Final Cut are definitely concept albums.
The Story of Pink. That was brilliant.
Yeah, well, and the Story of Pink actually continues into the Final Cut as well when there are moments of it. But The Wall was kind of the same way. Outside there are those, there are, I guess, the hits like Comfortably Numb, and there are some of those, but there's so many songs. And we'll get to the particulars, so I don't want to blow it early here. But I found it hard to pick out. When I listen to Pink Floyd, particularly those concept albums, I listen to them front to back. It's not like I'm just going to throw it on shuffle, right? So it seemed like I'm going to listen to Dark Side of the Moon. I'll listen to it front to back. I'll listen to the whole thing.
Shuffle does not agree with Pink Floyd at all.
It kind of doesn't. It'd be weird sometimes if you put the whole catalog on shuffle.
No, can't do it. Yeah.
It seems like things fit in certain order and things make sense that way. Out of context, outside of the hits, it's kind of weird that way. So I really struggled with trying to pick some of that music where everything flows together. It's like a puzzle, right? So I don't know if anyone else had that experience.
Completely. We've talked about that in prior podcasts about how some albums are just meant to be listened from, start to end without skipping. And I'd say almost every one of these guys' albums are like that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the list. There's a bit of a theme with our top 10 lists where we go full Spinal Tap and we turn it to 11. Again, we've got 11 on the list, so let's do 11. I don't know. We'll continue to call it a top 10 list, but the number 11 song, I'm gonna, if I can, start with Cecil, because the song is Money from Dark Side of the Moon, and and it's the bass riff. I mean, and you had it really high on your list. I think you had it second or third.
That one moved around a bit. It kept climbing, and I wasn't comfortable with 3 songs at the top that made me misty. I had to interrupt. I couldn't cry 3 songs in a row. Right? Because I had Fearless, Wish You Were Here, Comfortably Numb. I'm a puddle by the end, so I got to break it up,
Okay.
So, and I've always loved Money. See, I saw when I was a kid, my sister took me to the planetarium to watch the laser light show of Pink Floyd. And obviously I didn't get it then, but I still remember the money with the lasers doing like money symbols and stuff like that. So that's
the
always
cash register going.
Yeah, that's always stuck with me. And of
Nice.
course, killer bass, right? I'm always a bit biased towards the bass riff.
Yeah, we all have our tendencies, but I'll throw this out to the group. Is Roger Waters an underrated bass player?
I don't know.
Or is this one of those things? I mean, I'll get to David Gilmour because I think he's unbelievable, but he gets left out of a lot of conversations. Guys talk about Clapton and all these other guys, but I mean, are they just really good together? But there are some songs where Roger Waters will simply follow the drums, but then there's other times where he lays down a really cool riff, and you can really hear it, and it makes a difference. And again, I kind of noticed it a little bit more than when I had listened to the band, years ago.
I think he is a pretty good bass player. He's got like a lot of the songs have really cool bass grooves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's another conversation. Roger Waters drives me bananas, but yeah.
What was his last album that he was on?
The last album that on
Waters
Pink Floyd
was part
album
of-
was the
that's
final
right.
cut.
It was the final cut.
The final cut.
which was basically his solo album, to be
Right.
honest.
Right,
I think he
most
wrote it all, right?
of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I think he sings on every song. David Gilmour might sing a little bit on one of the tracks, but yeah, for all intents and purposes, it was more of a solo album. And if we have time later on, I'd like to get into a little bit of their solo careers because there's some good shit there as well for those people who like the band and might not be familiar with it. Number 10 overall was interesting to me. Childhood's End from Obscured by Clouds, and I think that was on 3 of the 4 lists. Who wants to take this one?
Not it.
Mauro? Well, why don't we go to Mauro? Mauro, you've got it second on your list.
It's not a song I used to listen to at all. It's just it's one of those songs that's a little bit out of the ordinary for them. It's like it's a rock tune. It kind of is, and I don't know what year it was. Probably like 69 or 70 that it was released.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking
72, Obscured by Clouds.
72. And it was just a little out of the ordinary. It was a more straightforward type song. It does start out a bit funny, and it doesn't kick in for I think a minute and a half. So you're kind of like confused there for a couple minutes, and then it's just a really simple song. I think David Gilmour sings most of that song, if not all of it, and I really like his voice, and I like the songs that he sings on. And this is something that if you asked me 10, 15 years ago, if that song would be on my list, it wouldn't.
Yeah.
And now I heard it and I was like, damn it, I couldn't stop playing it. I must have listened to it 20 times in the past week.
Yeah, Obscured by Clouds was never an album that I enjoyed back in the day when I used to listen to them all the time, which is weird because of the way that the albums were released. Like 1971, I really got into metal. I loved metal, which was 1971. 72 was Obscured by Clouds, and I didn't really like it. And I didn't know this actually at the time. I found out through all of this. They recorded it in 2 weeks, and it's a movie soundtrack for some French film. And so they wrote the album while watching the movie and fitting that in. So maybe that's why it's a little bit different, but it didn't really hit with me. And then, then Dark Side of the Moon happened. So it's kind of a weird black hole for me that Obscured by Clouds is in between metal and Dark Side. And I never listened to it, but that was the exact same song, that stood out for me, on that record.
And I originally had it, I think, quite lower down on my list. I kept moving it up. I kept moving it up because I kept listening. I would listen to it. I'd be like, oh, I got to listen to that again. and I would keep listening to it, so I moved it right up.
Yeah.
That's a song I don't even know if I heard, and it jumped way up the list. It's more of a, you don't hear many, like more of a melodic songs, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
Rather than
Yeah, you had it at number 10.
progressive rock. It just kept climbing, and I never recalled hearing it till last week.
Yeah, on Mauro's list, it was number 2. It was number 10 on Cecil's list. On my list, where the hell is it? Number 15. So a pretty good showing, again, for a song that I don't think that any of us had really paid much attention to. Number 9, if we move on, maybe we'll do 9 and 8 together, actually, because they're both from Dark Side of the Moon. In the 9 spot, Us and Them, just 2 points ahead of that is the Brain Damage / Eclipse. So we put those, so I guess technically we're talking 3 songs, but Brain Damage and Eclipse kind of run into each other, right? So, and they're always played together. Kind of like, I used the Led Zeppelin example with Living Loving Maid and Heartbreaker. You never play one or the other, even on the radio, they come together. So those are the 3, I guess, that we'll put together. Brain Damage, Eclipse seem to be relatively high on most lists. Cease, you've got it at number 7, another song that you really enjoyed.
Yeah, one I was actually familiar with. So, which
you'd heard that one before, right? It's on one of those albums.
Yeah, everything. The only ones that came out of the blue, were "Shine On, Crazy Diamond," and would be this one, "Echoes." Things like the songs off Animals are like their way down on the list, but I digress. No, Brain Damage, Eclipse. Once again, the 2-song thing threw me off a bit. It's actually 2 songs, but. Yeah. Is that song about Trump?
Or one of us?
I find all that Dark Side of the Moon has that, I don't want to say orchestral feel, because the keyboards are really...
does.
Yeah, and the keyboards are really a big part of those songs.
Mm-hmm. And the choir.
And the choir. And... it just, it's different than what I'm used to listening to these days, and it really has it's kind of got an uplifting feel when you hear, that sort of whole thing put together with keyboards, the choir, the guitars, the bass, and you don't really notice the drums, but I do have to say that the drumming for me, I've always enjoyed the drumming on all the Pink Floyd stuff, even though it's fairly simple.
Yeah, I think it fits.
I think you're missing one key instrument that is on Us and Them, and that is the tasteful saxophone.
Yes,
it just comes in out of nowhere.
They
It kind of caught
saxophone.
me off guard, and I was like, they use it really well.
And
It's
saxophone solos, which is amazing, right? Like, how many bands do we listen to, or how many bands can you name that have, saxophone solos, and they're incredible.
Yeah, and sometimes the sax comes in like halfway through.
I saw a saxophone solo live at a Tina Turner concert.
Wow.
My first concert.
You've lost all credibility.
No, it was amazing. And so then I played saxophone in the junior high band. I loved it.
Oh boy, inspired.
Wow. But the rock sax. Sorry, I'll interrupt. I'm not usually a big fan of the rock sax, like
same.
Like Bruce Springsteen, right? And they, but this one it works. They have a lot of saxophone that works good. And then the other thing I'm not sure how a fan I am is the choir, the rock choir. I always find that a little creepy when there's rock choirs like Tina Turner, as to mention that again, or like that Toy Soldier song.
Yeah.
Something. Anyway.
And for those that are listening that have had the pleasure of seeing this band play live, that the whole works is there, right? The horn section, the saxophone, you got depending on which tour it is, there's 3 girls that are there as part of the choir, and it comes together, whether it's Great Gig in the Sky. Us and Them is a great example. There's so many songs that that come together, and it really is such a it's ear candy that is it just sounds right in my opinion.
Yeah, that's the first album, in my opinion, where they really had songs.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't say that they did have songs before, but that's the first one where it was like really, it was really well written. Some of the earlier stuff, I think, to me, it felt like noise, but that album's crazy in terms of how it's put together.
Yeah, it's definitely more cohesive, and who knows how that all came together. But you're right. I mean, the albums prior to that, Dark Side was 1973, and you're looking, Obscured by Clouds, Metal, Atom Heart Mother, which was funny because that album starts off with, how long is the title track? I think it's 23 minutes or something like that. Right. And then there's Amagama and the More soundtrack, Saucer Full of Secrets, Piper at the Gates of Dawn. So that was really the one that kind of came together, I think.
Well, and I was reading, and it just quickly, you can't believe everything you read on the internet. However, what it was saying is that they weren't musicians. They were a group of guys getting together and literally making noise, like when they started out. And
shit.
They met at school or something. One dude took a year off and was an architect or something. I don't remember who that was, but yeah.
Yeah, they were all in university, but it was, I would have thought by listening to their newer stuff that they were like trained musicians.
Yeah.
And what I read said that they weren't. And so maybe, if you look at the first few years of their career, it was quite different and this is where they really started some really significantly amazing songwriting, in my opinion.
Here I found, I was reading some rock history and some of the early names of Pink Floyd. It was Roger Waters, Wright, and then one of the other guys, can't remember. They were Sigma 6, and then they ended up settling on the T set. But between there, some of the early names, listen to this. There's the Abdabs, Screaming Abdabs, Leonard Lodgers, the Spectrum 5, and the Megadeths.
No shit.
Love it.
What if they were called the Megadeths?
Wow.
Dude,
Mustaine would have been searching for something else. And it's funny because they were known as the Pink Floyd in the beginning, right?
Oh,
So I think that's maybe the times back in the in the 60s. If you were a band, you were the something, right? So let's we've got kind of a run of Dark Side. So, but we're gonna break it up here at number 7 with Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, and we could probably even put The Happiest Days of Our Lives as kind of the intro to that if we want to package them together. But either way, Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. Obviously, a commercial success, very well known. You hear it on all the classic rock stations. I think it was the highest. I'm scanning. Mauro. It was the highest on your list. It made it to number 5 on your personal list. And I think it was on all 4 of the lists. So I don't know. Why don't you run with that?
Well, for me, unless you put the two songs together, The Happiest Days of Our Lives and Another Brick, I wouldn't pick it. So that's how I had it.
Okay.
I think The Happiest Days of Our Lives really sets it up.
Yep.
And it's one of those songs where it just abruptly starts. Another Brick in the Wall does, if the song before it's not played.
True. Yeah, because it starts right with the lyric, right?
Yeah, and they fit together like a glove. And I'm sure they're meant to be that way, of course. That's probably how they wrote it. And it's different. It's Roger Waters at his best, in my opinion. Because sometimes he can grate on me the way that he sings, but in that it suits his voice, and it's got that kind of thump 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 beat, and it's a really different song. You don't hear much like that on the radio, and it gets played on the radio a lot.
It does. And that goes back to what we were saying, about particularly an album like this, where you listen to it, from beginning to end. Could you imagine if, you had your iPhone with you and just put your Pink Floyd stuff on random, and it played the Happiest Days of Our Lives. So you'd get that intro, and then it would stop, and then it'd play something different. That just doesn't work.
Yeah, it wouldn't make any sense.
It's got to go in order. It's all got to be together.
So I snuck in an extra song there, just so you.
You sure
Well, we
did.
all
In case you didn't notice.
We all kind of did in certain respects, right? But I agree with you, right? It is, those two songs do go together really well, no different than Brain Damage and Eclipse.
And the one thing, what year was The Wall released? Sorry,
The Wall was 79.
79, and you know what really gets me on that, and I forgot to mention it, was I love the way the guitar is, and he's using a delay, and that's been more popularized by U2 and that kind of stuff, the Edge, but the delay on the guitar is really great, and with the bass line and the drums, and it's kind of just dun, 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 dun. It's got just a really cool groove to it, and that was probably the first time I heard someone do that with a delay on a guitar.
Yeah, and I'm gonna come back to that because I want to talk to you about another song on your list. I had a note here. You kind of stole my thunder a little bit, but I'll come back to that. But that's a great observation. So that was number 7. 6 and 5 are going to go back to Dark Side. Number 6 is Breathe in the Air. Number 5 is Time. I'll touch briefly on Breathe in the Air. One of my favorite songs, a great song live if you look at any of the early footage. And even there's a really good version of it. The band obviously broke up, and then they got together for Live 8, I think it was called, like in 2005, 2006, somewhere in there. And that was the first time they got together in a long time, and it was the last time they've ever played together. But they did a 4-song set similar to, like that first Live Aid, the Queen set that everybody still talks about, and they made the movie about, where you go in, you play your 20, 25-minute set, and they do a version of Breathe in the Air, and it might even be the first song that they played. Unbelievable. But again, just with the choir and that David Gilmour's voice, I just absolutely love that song. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment on that particular song. Otherwise, I know that, Gord, you had Time at number 2 on your personal list.
I sure did.
Regretfully, I couldn't fit it into my top 20, so I need to come clean on that it didn't make my top 20, so I do feel bad about that. But why don't you run with Time?
Sure.
Coming from a place of not hearing this band.
If I've heard this song before, I don't remember. I'm sure I must have sometime in my life, but I really can't recall. But it was the first time I listened to it, I didn't know where this was going. I thought it was maybe a good candidate to be skipped, quite frankly. But I let that first 2 minutes breathe, and it really, sets the mood for the song. And then the riff just starts out of nowhere to me. Like, it just boom. All of a sudden you're in the middle of the song, and it's just, It's so groovy. It's so catchy. And then I just needed to know how the song ended. I listened to it like 3 times in a row when I first heard this on our go through here. And I don't know what it was. It just stuck with me. David Gilmour sings that one. Is that correct? Is that a Gilmour song?
Yep.
Yeah, I did notice, I was trying not to pay too much attention to this, but I couldn't help but notice that I actually like David Gilmour's voice quite a bit better. I don't know if they sing each other's lyrics or not. I didn't get into the writing credits as much. I know Waters wrote a lot of the albums where he did all the lyrics and sang all, but I do prefer David Gilmour's voice. I find he's got more range, a little more.
He's a better singer, for sure.
He's definitely got a better voice, and he's got, I don't know what it is. He's got more depth to his voice, and I don't mean like range in terms of bass and treble. He seems to have more emotional range, I guess. Really like how he sang that song. Time stuck out for me for sure. It was excellent.
Yeah, Roger Waters, to me, I mean, you can lump him in. I don't know if that's, I don't want to be disrespectful, but there's that group of singers that maybe aren't great singers, but they've found a style and certain songs that fit really well. And there's a song that's coming up a little bit higher in this top 11 list that we'll talk about. But like a Neil Young or like a Willie Nelson, like not great singers, but they've found a style. And I'm with you. I find that the songs that Roger Waters sings are obviously different than the ones that David Gilmour sings, and probably the same as with John and Paul in the Beatles, and you can go through a bunch of other groups that have sort of two front men, if you will, or two vocalists. There is a different style in it, and it suits each guy. And I'll throw it to Mauro or Cecil. I don't know if you have any comments for Time or Breathe in the Air.
No, Breathe is that could climb. I have it at 5, and I could even move it higher. I love that. That floated around number 1. Those top 5 were moving around. That song just sits in your head all the time.
Yeah,
especially when you're getting stressed out.
Yeah,
I found the same thing. Both of those songs are super chill. I love them.
All right. I can hardly wait to get to this next one here because I'm going to need some explanation because I'm not sure how I process this.
Okay, this is great. So that ends the Dark Side of the Moon run, where 1, 2, 3, 4. So we had 5 of those. Of those 7, I guess, were Dark Side.
Yep.
So number 4 on the overall list from Wish You Were Here, the album, Shine On You Crazy Diamond. And I think what we kind of decided was we were going to talk about the song in its entirety. Now there's 1 to 5 and then 6 to 9. In my research, I wasn't aware of this, but it was written as one song. I actually read that what happened was they played it, they recorded it, and they had one take. They did that fucking thing in one take.
What?
Wow.
And when they listened back to it, something happened. They were using a new board, and something happened where the track, one bled into another, and it sounded like shit. So they ended up re-recording it, and at that time they were struggling trying to get it all together, and they decided to make it into two songs. So we kind of listed Shine On You Crazy Diamond 1 to 5 as our favorites, and I agree. That's probably my favorite, but we do include, we'll call both songs if we again include them all together. So what are we up to, like 13 songs now that we're talking about? But the chorus is the same, so can we get away with it? Probably. And it's our podcast. We can do whatever the hell we want. So, Gord, what is your problem with this song?
I don't know if I don't have a problem with the song. I think I have the problem.
Well, that could very well be, but what's
I'm so confused.
What's the issue?
I mean, I've listened to Rush and some other bands that play long songs with different parts, but this one just was like meandering all over the place. And I was like, what is happening here? There's definitely distinct parts, but it all seemed to flow together. And I don't know how long that first part is, like 13 minutes or something in that range. It's long.
The first one is like 13 and a half minutes, but you don't get a lyric till 8.5 maybe.
And I was like, is this like 9? Is this a bunch of different songs? I was so confused, but on a re-listen, I'm like, this is actually genius. What I should have done was listen to it straight through and skip to the other parts so I could do the whole thing at once, because they're not sequential on the album, are they?
No, they're not.
Right, they're split up by a few songs. So
yeah,
I haven't actually listened to that and then skipped to the other part. I'd like to try listen to it as one. I'm sure that would be pretty awesome.
If you define an intro from when the song starts to when the singing starts, that would have a 8-minute and 42-second intro.
Is that what it is?
Before there's any singing. Yeah.
So you think it's, you probably think, oh, here's another instrumental. And then it kicks in.
And you're like, huh?
Yeah.
Remember when you were young, and it just kind of goes from there. And it's
and that song's about Syd Barrett, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And great atmosphere in that song. Like that whole first part is just atmosphere. And then again, I got to go back to it, man. Tasteful saxophone just coming in out of nowhere, like an angel, saxophonic angel. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I used to hate the rock sax. The rock sax poses, like
I'm with you too,
they're like
man.
the metal poses, like the lean forward, the lean back, the shake your head.
Go back to jazz band, clown. No, these guys pull it off like they're
I love that shit, man.
And what I again
Take your shirt off. Oil up. You know?
yeah
Shave your chest, oil it up.
yeah yeah
Leather pants.
Chest hair.
Looking awesome, man.
I want to be that guy now.
yeah.
Yeah.
We're all taking sax lessons after
Some
this.
shit kickers, some cowboy boots, man. Fucking
Yeah.
nuts.
The
Yeah,
boys
but-
will say, "Hey, why don't we get together for a jam session?" And four of us are going to show up with a saxophone.
The only problem is I'm fat. I don't have the bodybuilder body, so it would be a horrific sight.
But Carlin is quite right. Like, I've never been a huge fan.
Brandon will be like, "Hey, you got next to read?"
Next to read. I've never been a big fan of the sax and rock tunes, but these guys just seem to pull it off really tastefully, and I thought it was really
hate
good.
the rock sax still.
Yeah.
I can't figure this band out. Like I said, I've loved this band for a long time. Yet I don't like any other band in this sort of genre, if you call it, progressive rock or psychedelic rock or however you want. I'm not really big on bands that have really long songs and lots of instrumentals and shit like that. Like I can't explain this. I really can't. But this is a band that just is, I don't know. It just does it for me, and I could
Well,
listen
live,
to them
it's-
forever.
The thing is, live it's amazing because it's like a journey.
yeah.
So the whole stadium reeks of weed, right? There's a laser light show. and
Yeah, the
it's
show's
like,
incredible. Good call.
they don't even need smoke machines because there's so much smoke coming out of the crowd.
Yep.
And it's
And the
you just-
lasers and the
it's like you're sitting in a living room with your buddies listening to tunes when you're at their concert. It's not like you're at a, people aren't like standing up and dancing and stuff. Really, it's more like chilling out. It's cool.
Yeah, it really is. And, again, Mauro, you and I have been fortunate enough to see the band. And that's exactly what it is. And for those that either whether you're familiar with the band or not, hop on YouTube and check out some of their live stuff. And Mauro, you sent that,
Comfortably numb.
yeah, the
live,
Comfortably Numb one from, I think it was like 1981 or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely amazing. So we'll talk about that here in a couple of seconds. But before we get to that song, we'll just move on to number 3. I was really surprised, that this song made everybody's top 4 or top 20. I mean, the 4 of us, quite frankly, just again because we got a couple of guys that aren't as familiar. But it's from an album called Metal, and the song is called Fearless, and it's one of my favorite songs. Although at the time when I used to listen to metal as a kid, that was not my favorite song on the album. But when I went back and listened to it all again, it was incredible. And this, I can't even believe Cecil had this as the number 1 song on his list. So I'm going to send this over to Cecil because I want to hear how, for a guy that had 3 Pink Floyd albums and never heard this before, fires out the Fearless in the number 1 hole.
Mm-hmm.
Made me a little misty.
Yeah.
You can never explain why, but you hear it, the first passing through. It's just a song. Then I got a little familiar with it. Then I'm yearning for it, And then I had to go to it every so often. I'm like, I got to hear Fearless. But it's got a, it's alternate tuning too, right? It's got an off sound, kind of similar to like an open tuning, like Seasons, Chris Cornell or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
Man, it just said, I Wish You Were Here was number 1 the whole time.
Yep.
And I had to move it because I like Fearless
switched.
more, I had to switch it, but yeah, it just took over.
I was the same. I couldn't stop listening to that song either.
Yeah, same. But between those two, they could flip flop maybe, but Fearless made a final leap once I had good familiarity with it. I love that song.
The melodies are so simple.
And I'm a scared coward, so it helps with that.
I mean, and Gord, again, for a guy who's listening to the catalog for the first time, it came in at number 12 on your personal list. So
It was one of the songs that I listened to, and it immediately jumped out at me. Some of these took a second and third pass to really to let it digest and process, but this one jumped off the page. I don't know why. It definitely reminded me of Zeppelin when Zeppelin does some mellow acoustic stuff. Like I could see them doing this quite easily. I really, really like this song. And then when I double checked, I did my list and I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't quote unquote one of their huge hits, but for me, it was definitely in the top 10. Or I guess I had it at 12, but it was one of the best songs that they had, without a doubt.
Yeah, you guys just got me thinking. It's almost like Zeppelin type music with Beatles like singing.
Yeah.
It's kind of a combo. It's so good.
Yeah.
That Metal is a good album. Echoes. How long's that song? That was a good song. That was like 20 minutes.
23 and change.
23 and a half, brother. I like that one too. Sorry. We'll
Yeah,
get to
me
the
too.
ones. We'll get to the special mentions.
Yeah. We'll talk about some of that. And again, when you have an opportunity to look at some of the live stuff, there's a version of that on the Live at Pompeii video, and you can catch that on YouTube as well. And it's fucking wicked too. So, I will say that the one thing that I've really been getting out of these podcasts, and I'm hoping that the listeners are as well, particularly if you can get a couple of your buddies together doing what we're doing and creating lists, is I never thought in a million years that Fearless would be on all four of our lists, given our backgrounds and experience with the band, let alone finish in the top 3. So that's, I don't know, I find that pretty cool. Number 2 is the song that me and Gord had in the number 1 spot, Comfortably Numb from The Wall. This, again, goes against, we're starting to maybe get a little more, I don't want to say credibility, but in terms of, we've had some challenges in the past with the really popular songs not being on our list, or maybe not being high enough on the list. Comfortably Numb is there for me. It's my favorite song, particularly from live. What I love about it is, Roger Waters and David Gilmour both sing on it. I think that gives it a really cool dynamic. It's got 2 solos that are awesome.
No, they're the bomb. They're
right?
unbelievable. Yeah.
Love the double solo.
Just the double solo, and I mean, you get that with Pink Floyd with some of their songs that are so long. But I love David Gilmour's voice. I think Roger Waters' voice fits really well with the pieces that he sings, right? But that power that David Gilmour gives in the chorus, when he really gets into that chorus and the guitar playing, the whole thing is awesome. And again, find some live footage from back in the day when the band is still together. There's lots of footage when David Gilmour sings the whole thing, and it's still great, don't get me wrong. But when you get that dynamic of having both guys singing it and the solo and the whole thing, is just absolutely fucking mind-boggling.
Well, it's the epitome of what David Gilmour is as a guitar player in terms of his soloing. And I watched a masterclass with Carlos Santana talking about soloing and how, shredding is one thing, but it's not emotional, it doesn't have soul, and it doesn't have feel to it. And David Gilmour, to me, has always been the epitome of someone that plays his guitar with soul. He's not...
It's bluesy, right?
Especially in this song. Yeah, he plays a bluesy style for sure, but it also has, more to it. It's not just playing the blues scale. It's like holding notes and putting, like, you see his whole body get into what the solo is. The solo has so much feel to it, and I'm kind of getting a little cheesy here, but it's one of those songs, and I listen to it and I'm just like, it's so inspiring to hear someone play guitar like that, so simply yet so complex in the way that it's soulful.
Mm-hmm.
So
Totally agree. Great guitar playing. I found it surprising when you mentioned earlier that they don't have any technical training, because if I was to guess that any of them did, it would have been the keyboard player, of course, and Gilmour. His guitar on this is it's just a beautiful song. I don't know other word to use. It's one that I was familiar with from before, of course, but
yep,
Yeah, a week ago, that was my favorite song.
Is that right? Having listened to it again, like alongside their other good songs in their catalog, this one still sticks out as rightfully so one of their most popular. It's just a great song.
Yeah, and that takes us to the number one ranked song from our compiled list, "Wish You Were Here," the title track from the album "Wish You Were Here." I'm a little bit speechless. I mean, it was in the number one spot on my list as well. Again, we've, depending on the time, I know that you always adjust. It's hard to, off the cuff, if someone just came up to you and said, "What's your favorite Pink Floyd song?" You'll say something, but when you really try and put a list together, it's difficult. But "Wish You Were Here" is a great song. Again, the guitar playing on it is great. I love David Gilmour's voice in this, and it's funny. There's not a lot of lyrics to this song, really, but the part when he's actually singing the note that he's playing on guitar and stuff is really cool. I love this song. It's a great fucking song.
I was going to mention, Huffman, that I found this interesting in our list that, out of a possible score of 80, this one had 76, comfortably on 74, and the next on the list had 53. So these two were like neck and neck, right at 1 and 2, very interchangeable. I actually flip-flop a couple times between these two songs for my first choice. So I think we got the list right, though, in terms of "Wish You Were Here" edging "Comfortably Numb" out slightly. Great song.
Good campfire song.
Yep.
Great.
I can't think of a guitar
Actually, you're
player from our generation
I'm having a flashback.
that doesn't cover that.
Could
Or
have
try
been.
to. Everybody wants to play that.
This song's about, and forgive me for asking a newbie question here, but this is about Syd Barrett, I'm imagining. Is that correct? And his
I
mental
believe
health,
it is
his
as
mental
well.
health deterioration and okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's easy to draw those parallels, and I honestly don't know the answer to this, so I'm just my opinion. But it's funny that "Shine On You Crazy Diamond" is also on that album. So is that the "Wish You Were Here" album? A tribute or something? It probably is. How deep it goes, I honestly don't know the answer to that. But that's kind of the way I would interpret it as well.
Okay. I'm sure there's going to be some listeners firing off a heated email right now. You idiot.
Well, you know what? It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Fine.
I'd have a hard time. And again, there's a lot of great songs on here, and everybody's going to have their lists. And that's why, again, I tell everybody who listens to try and create the list as well. Ideally, when you know that what the episode is going to be about, create the list before you listen and kind of follow along and see what's there. I think it'd be an interesting process. Before, I don't know if there's anyone else who wants to say anything on "Wish You Were Here," but one thing I did want to say when we talked earlier about the Roger and David voices and how they fit with certain styles of song, and this has been a song that David Gilmour always sings, and I spoke glowingly about the Live 8 reunion in 05 where they played the 4 songs. Now, if you want to see how when you have the wrong guys singing the wrong song, how it fucks it up, watch that video. They play "Wish You Were Here," and for whatever reason, Roger Waters sings part of that song, and he fucks it up. It's just, that's not his song. He can't, right? That's just not.
I can't
that's
imagine
not the way
him
it is.
singing
So
it because, again, we were talking about Gilmour's more soulful, maybe voice, and I can't imagine Waters singing that. I got to check that out for sure.
Yeah, check it out. Everybody listening, check that out as well, and just again, leave your comments and let us know what your thoughts of it were when you saw it. But overall,
Was it as bad as the Metallica concert without James?
I haven't seen it. I didn't even know that thing existed until you texted me after and said, "Oh, there was the one where Lars was sick or something, and they had a bunch of different drummers fill in." I didn't know that happened. I didn't know that they played a gig without James. So that would have been interesting. So, anything else on "Wish You Were Here," the song before we move on to a couple of other items?
Well, I find it interesting we had no arguments on this top 10.
Well, there's still time. This
I-
is not
yeah.
over.
Mind you,
I was
Mind you-
expecting that.
mind you, I'm a huge Division Bell fan, and I had at least 3 songs on my list that
Yeah.
aren't getting any mention.
Well, so we're going to get into that. So let's recap, if we can, the top 10. The top 10 are Wish You Were Here as number 1. So we're going 1 to 10, technically 11. We're going Wish You Were Here, Comfortably Numb, Fearless, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, both versions, Time, Breathe in the Air, Another Brick in the Wall, With the Happiest Days of Our Lives as the intro, Brain Damage and Eclipse, Us and Them, Childhood's End, and Money. That gives us, I don't know how many, but that's probably 14 songs or 13 songs. But anyway, that was them. Yeah, I'm gonna, I'll throw it to you, Mauro, because the Division Bell, I think, is kind of an underrated Pink Floyd album. I think we talk about this with a lot of the artists that we have because they've put out so much great material. The fact that it was released in the mid '90s probably doesn't help either, because the '90s were kind of a weird time. But one of the notes that I had written down, and you touched on it, so I'm going to try and tie this together as best I can as a non-guitarist talking sort of guitar language, so you can call me stupid at any time. But there was sort of that, what was known as the edge sound, and you really heard it on Joshua Tree, right? There is that edge sound, whereas I always thought that it was kind of his sound. I never really thought much about it, but when you listen to The Wall, you really hear it on Run Like Hell. You talked about it with Another Brick in the Wall and those kinds of things. And I think the edge kind of, I don't want to like to use the term stole, but I think he kind of borrowed that. And then the edge got away from it for a little while. And then the song where or at least the album, it seems to be fairly prominent in a couple of songs on Division Bell. And I was wondering if that had, something to do with why you liked it. I'm trying to find my note here. There was a particular song, Keep Talking, I think might have been the song. I don't have it in front of me. But anyway, I'll stop talking. I'll let you.
That has that
you
delay sound on the guitar. Yeah, for sure it does. But I like that song for more than just that. I think it's a really cool tune. And again, me not being a lyrics guy, I love the lyrics for it. It's just a cool song. It's got that. It's got a pretty solid beat too. So I think for me, the Division Bell, it seems like maybe a David Gilmour kind of solo act. But either way, I remember you and I, Huff, lined up at Tramps in whatever year it was, 1992, or at midnight for the release of this. And we picked up the CD and took it home. And so I've loved it ever since then. So I have 3 songs in my top 20, and I think, of course it doesn't get any love, but it has that, it sounds like old guys doing rock, kind of, I guess.
Well, yeah, your 3 songs, just for the listeners, from Division Bell, are Lost for Words, What Do You Want From Me, which was a hit, and then Keep Talking, which you had third. I had a note here as well with Keep Talking. There's a keyboard section in there as well that was very reminiscent to me of that synthesized keyboard that you get on the Wish You Were Here album. So it's, again, still staying true to their, I don't want to say it's true to their roots or whatever, but I thought it was interesting that they brought that all back.
Well, they recorded that, and then the newest one was sessions from that recording, but on David Gilmour's yacht, and super cool looking boat. If you look it up online, it's just absolutely awesome. So they just jammed out.
Yeah. I want to talk generally with you guys about an album that we haven't talked about yet, that has songs kind of peppered throughout all of our lists, but just weren't high enough to crack into the top 11. Animals. Again, a weird album in terms of there's 5 songs. I think there are 5 songs, but the opening one and the closing one, Pigs on the Wing, I think those are only a minute and a half or whatever they are, and then the 3 songs kind of make up the meat of it, if you will, with Pigs, Dogs, and Sheep. All of those songs have made our top 20s in some form at some level. So does anybody want to say anything about that album or about a particular track on
I have
Animals?
just a fun fact about the name of the songs, because I was like, how did they come up with those names? They seem odd. And of course, it was a Roger Waters idea, and it was his way of his thoughts on describing society at the time. And they're pigs, dogs, and sheep.
Oh, okay.
Which I find somewhat
Accurate.
insulting, but
It's somewhat accurate. Yeah.
At least he didn't do another album
It's
about
still
his
true
mommy and
today.
daddy issues. So that's good.
Yeah, it is still true. It was pretty cool back in the day when they released that album where they had those big inflated pig that they would take and
totally.
fly outside the arenas and stuff. You can look online. There's all kinds of pictures of it. They're going into wherever, and there's this pig flying kind of, in the horizon. So it's
hilarious.
kind of cool. So
There's not a lot of... Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just, on the Roger Waters thing, he seems to take himself too seriously. Like his writing seems really serious, like whether it's politics or society.
He seemed to have a issue with authority figures and teachers and mothers.
Yeah, and if I mean, I know this has been quite the experience for a lot of you guys, but if you want to catch sort of the lighter side, Roger Waters released a solo album called The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. I don't remember what year it was. I think it was after the final cut, so we'll call it 84, 85, something like that. And it was a great album, but it's kind of cheeky a little bit. There's some humor in there, and it's kind of entertaining. What's great about it, though, of course, I think he recognizes that if he's going to put out a solo album and one that does well, he needs a great guitarist. So on Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking, he's got Eric Clapton playing guitar, and I like the album. It's a great album, and it's a really if you like guitar, if you like Eric Clapton, there's some really good shit on there. But lyrically, it's a lot lighter. It's a lot different from what you find on the final cut and The Wall. So that's sort of my kind of tip of the day, if you will. Anything else on Animals? I know we don't want to make this episode too fat, although it's so hard to do because the catalog's so big, and once you get past those 11 songs, there's such a variety of different things. So I don't know. Do I want to go into a speed round and just mention a couple of songs?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yep.
Cecil,
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw it to you because this is, there's been a lot of agreeing. Gord said there's got to be some arguments. Now, what the hell is going on with the crying song on your list at number 17? It's from the movie soundtrack More, and I
Surprise.
I listened to it 3-4 times, and I don't get it. It's not a song that would make my top 50.
That's a good question. Why? I don't know how I can back that up. I thought you'd
Probably.
be more picky about instrumentals making the list, because I
Well,
found
you know what?
they have the craziest. Their instrumentals are in best I've maybe ever heard. They're unreal.
Well,
I got 2 on my
yeah,
list.
there's no shortage of it, and when we talked about Metallica, I guess we didn't foresee us doing Pink Floyd, but Orion made that list, and we agreed that it's a great instrumental. But yeah, from the only song that made it any of our lists from the Piper at the Gates of Dawn was Interstellar Overdrive. It was on your list. You had it at 18, and then on the Obscured by Clouds, you had the again you combined. You combine
don't know
a couple
if it's one
there.
or two songs, right?
Yeah, so there's Obscured by Clouds and When You're In. So you had those. So for a guy that didn't know much about the band, you surely embraced some of their earlier work.
Yeah, and it's hard to catch up, like on the stuff you're not familiar with and comparing it with stuff you're familiar. So that was most of my work, just trying to get, the Syd Barrett stuff. I was so different than I'm used to. That one I had to try a little harder, but there was some.
The guitaring is really cool.
Yeah, like I was listening to Lucifer
Sam's awesome.
And I literally this morning I was writing down, this sounds like Austin Powers. And Slater looks at me and he goes, Dad, why are you listening to Mission Impossible? I'm like, you hear it too, man. Hey, because Austin Powers ripped off Mission Impossible for their soundtrack, right?
Yeah.
But,
those are both songs I had teetering in that just over number 20, Loose for Sam and what was the other one?
But quickly back to Animals. I don't think I would have even got through it if you didn't recommend it. And then thank goodness you did, because it, again, after a second listening, it started to stick.
Yeah. It's again one of my favorite albums. Pretty much anything after 1971, again starting with metal. Obscured by Clouds, not as much, but for the most part, anything that happened after 1971, I'm a big fan of. Gord, I'm gonna pick on you a little bit.
Yeah, buddy.
Let's stick with the theme of earlier songs. Careful with that axe, Eugene. Where the hell did that come from? Considering you hadn't listened to this band at all up until about 5 days ago.
Well, I'm as surprised as you are with that selection, Huffman. I was desperately trying to find something good that I enjoyed.
And you had a 10. Sorry to cut you off.
I did have a 10.
Not only did you just have it, you had it at number 10. So somehow this thing came out of fucking nowhere.
I had it high, brother.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only song I can remember off of the early days was Astronomy Domine, which I know, speaking to you guys before, you guys enjoyed, and I thought I was going to enjoy it, and I really, really didn't enjoy it listening to it again. It's just a lot of nonsense, in my opinion.
But that's
I thought you were going to say,
yeah.
I owned that album before I owned any of the others.
Strangely, I didn't, because I was not born, but you know what? I'll let you know when that happens.
Yeah.
But I stumbled upon Careful with That Axe, Eugene, which is it's a funny enough title, but as soon as I heard it, I'm thinking this is a song the Doors could have played. It's got a very much a Doors feel to it, and I don't know what it was about it. I just really, really like that song. Maybe I just love the title and I'm just full of shit. I don't know. But I think I like the song too. It had a really different feel. It was a little more accessible. It wasn't quite as insane as some of the other psychedelic stuff they're into. I really liked it. I had to put it at 10, man.
Yeah. Mauro, I'm going to shift gears on you a little bit. I guess maybe for the whole group. Again, I mentioned Obscured by Clouds, not one of my favorites. Saying that, Childhood's End was on everybody's list. We've already talked about that. But you've got kind of a smattering of other songs from that album. I'm just you got What's the Deal, The Gold, It's in the, and is that it? I think you've got 3. So
Yeah.
The Goal That's In that made 21 on mine. I like that song too.
yeah, the top 20. We're just slowly expanding all of these. But anyway, I'll let you talk about Obscured by Clouds, because you even talked before we started this that said, don't sleep on this album, and in the back of my mind I was already had a preconceived notion that I don't like that album. I don't think I'm really going to have anything on there, and lo and behold, I ended up with 2 songs on my top 20 from there. So why don't you talk about that real quick?
Well, so I'm like I said, I didn't listen to it a ton over the years, and then I really just started listening to it, and I find that for Pink Floyd, it's just a little more of a straightforward sound. The songs are a little bit shorter, and the songs are, pretty much guitar and singing. And I do get a feel that David Gilmour dominates the vocals in those, and I prefer him as a vocalist. So those kind of just they popped up as sort of surprises for me. I didn't expect those songs to be on my list, but I totally recommend listening to them because, if you don't want to listen to a 20-minute song or a 15-minute song and you want to listen to something more Beatlesque,
Yeah.
I'll say that those are those type of songs, and that's what I enjoy about them. And it's more a new thing than it is something I could have said before that I love those songs. So I'm gonna keep listening to those songs more and more because they're great.
Yeah. Okay. A couple of other albums I guess we haven't talked about, and again, I want to do this relatively quickly. A Momentary Lapse of Reason, 1987. I was big into this album. I find that this is another one of those albums. It's not a concept album, I get it, but it's hard to pick out other than Learning to Fly, which was the hit and had the video and that. It's kind of hard. Like, again, when you listen to the entire album in order, a song like, Terminal Frost kind of makes sense, but out of nowhere, if you threw it in shuffle, it doesn't. So I think there was a little bit of a struggle. Cecil didn't have any of those songs on his list. Gord had Learning to Fly. I had Learning to Fly for the longest time. And then it was lower on the list. It got shuffled out, but I did have Sorrow on the list. And Mauro, you had Sorrow as well. Was that the only song that I thought you had?
I might have had one on an earlier version, but
it might have been on the earlier version.
Sorrow's the one that made it. I think with that album, it's like a poster boy for 1980s production sound.
Yeah,
that's where it almost turns me off now. Because I loved it too, and I still actually do. The songs are great.
Why in the 80s could they not end songs? Sorry, right?
Would they just fade them out?
Yeah, like where
everything just fades out.
I hate that. Yeah, just fade away. Imagine a concert and they just turn the volume down right between the song. Like, how stupid was that?
Yeah, no, you're right. I never thought of that. So, yeah, Momentary Lapse of Reason. I like that album a lot. Sorrow is on that album. One album I'll mention, The Endless River, which is essentially, some leftover. So, who am I thinking of here? Richard Wright. Richard Wright died, and I think it was in 2006 or something like that. So they had created the Division Bell. So the Endless River is essentially a bunch of stuff that they had left over from the Division Bell. So the whole thing for the most part is instrumental. There's some pretty cool stuff on there. Nothing that would make the top 20, I don't believe. There's one song that has lyrics. I don't know the name of that song off the top of my head. But that album, I think, again, if for those that have now gone through this process and have found a little bit of enjoyment from the band, it might be worth taking a listen to that. So, and
I kind of alluded to it earlier, but yeah, that's basically like a jam session. It's really good.
Yeah,
it's good if you just want to chill out and listen to instrumentals for.
Yep, there's some cool stuff. So
85 minutes.
Let's quickly go to sort of the deep cuts portion of today's episode and mention one or two songs either on your list, somebody else's list, or maybe something that was almost on your list, or whatever songs that either for yourself that you enjoyed, or if you're recommending something out of the ordinary maybe for some of the listeners.
Well, I got one. This is kind of a microcosm for the whole Pink Floyd ranking experience for me. I had this song at number 4, then off my list, then in the teens, then off my list, and then it ended up at number 8, and it was The Great Gig in the Sky. And
Okay.
every time I listen to this song, I had a completely different like reaction to it. Whereas, oh my God, this is amazing to stop screaming. So this is the song, if you're not familiar, it's got a female wailing is the only way I
Yes.
can describe it. And
Yeah.
at one point I'm like, oh my God, she's speaking like with her voice without saying words. It's incredible. And then other times I'm like, oh my God, like stop screaming. What are you screaming about? Song's over, man. Wrap this shit up. But it ended up at number 8, and I think that's where it needed to be for me. I think it's a really good song. I don't know if you guys had same experience with this song as I did, but I was all over with this one.
Yeah, nice. I also want to, on your list, maybe give a shout out to "Goodbye Blue Sky" because that's on your list, and that's a tremendous song. And again, it's one of those things. The video is great. It fits really, really well, and the animation that happens in the movie is wicked as well. So I just want to give you a shout out for a hell of a
Excellent
great
song as
pick
well.
on that one. Cease, do you want to dive into something here?
Yeah, just with Fearless. Anyone know why? I don't know. Like they end the song with the Liverpool FC song. The crowd sings "You'll Never Walk Alone," which is a mystery, strange. Like reading the lyrics, trying to put two and two together, can't figure it out. Yeah, it's just odd, and it makes me wonder, like why do we never sing songs at hockey games? Right? Like, why is that not caught on over here, huh?
Yeah,
Right?
in
Much
Europe
better
they do
that
all
be,
the time.
right? I don't know.
Yeah.
The song on the Turning Away was getting me pretty emotional. I really loved it, then I hated it, and then I liked it again. Like I don't know if it's kind of got that cheese factor where it's getting a little misty again. Then I'm like, I hate this song.
I love it.
And today I love it. Yeah. They're
Yeah.
gonna be going back and forth. But
Yeah, that's it. That's a great pick. I'm glad you
another
I'm
song
glad you mentioned that.
applicable for today's times, right?
Yeah. No, awesome. Yeah, that's a great pick. Mauro?
I'm going to go with Nobody Home on the Wall.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically just
About me.
that's just basically Roger Waters, the piano and some strings. And it's a killer song. Not really the kind of song that I would normally listen to at all, but really well written. I'll jump on Cease's emotional train, and it's just kind of one of those songs I would never listen to, but it's great. And Lucifer Sam off their first album, and it's just a little guitar rock thing. It's super cool.
Nice.
Influenced music for years to come, I'm sure.
I'm really proud of you two for reaching some new emotional depths and having Pink Floyd help you get there. It's good growth, fellas.
Right? That's what we're here for.
Indeed.
I'm gonna do I think 3 real quick. One, because I did mention earlier that the Final Cut was one of my favorite albums, and I've listened to it a million times. Mauro and I both had The Gunner's Dream on our list. That's maybe the one song that you can sort of listen to on its own or in isolation without the rest of the album. I absolutely love that song. It's a great example of Roger Waters. You know, just his voice fits the song. It's a hell of a tune. The closest song I had to an instrumental, and I had it number 4 on my list. It's called One of These Days from the album Metal. It is, for all intents and purposes, an instrumental, except for there's some spoken word where he says, "One of these days I'm going to cut you into little pieces." But it is just, it's a fabulous tune. I absolutely love that. And then the third one is from the soundtrack More, which I don't find a whole lot on there that I like, but the Nile song, for whatever reason, I really digged it. It was a tune that I really got into. It's kind of a rocking little number, and it's unlike me. Like I said, most of the stuff that I like is 1971 and beyond, and that was a couple of years earlier. So that's pretty much it. So overall, boys, I know it was a tedious exercise, and there was a lot of hours spent listening to a lot of music that you probably haven't heard before. But how do you feel now?
I didn't think I could like a week more than Soundgarden, but I like this week because it's like Soundgarden but new.
Well, you spent the whole week crying.
Yeah, I do. I cry a lot. I cry every Sunday during the movie too. Can't watch movies on Sunday for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I loved it. It was your
just
recommendations were good on the songs I hadn't heard, so just brilliant. Huge fan.
Awesome. So obviously, Cecil is going to now add some Pink Floyd into his daily or weekly routine. Where are you at, Gord?
You know what? I went from not really liking this band to having a really greater appreciation for their abilities. They do have some fantastic songs. There's a few songs that'll be in my permanent rotation, without a doubt. I really enjoyed the process. I feel like I got a lot more deeper knowledge about them, and as I said, like just a deeper appreciation of what they're capable of. Their high end stuff is off the charts. Had to get through a lot of filler to get to some of that, but it was worth it. There's some just beautiful songs in that top 10.
Awesome. Mauro?
Well, like Cease, I spent 2 weeks listening to Soundgarden and Nirvana. So I was like, my living room was like a mosh pit.
It's a bit of a shift, right?
Well, my guitar was out, and it was like power chords, drop D.
Yeah.
But this week I found myself listening with my headphones on. I get up in the morning and do some stuff around the house, and I just listen because the music's fantastic. And I've always liked Pink Floyd. I just, in recent years haven't really listened to them as much. And it's funny. I was thinking about this. The song "Brain Damage" is like a therapy session. If you need a little therapy about going mentally bananas, listen to the lyrics in that song. It's awesome. And then another thing I was thinking, which kind of made me chuckle, is if you've seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, the Stanley Kubrick movie, I'm surprised these guys haven't done a soundtrack or didn't do back in those days a soundtrack for that guy, because the music fits his directing style and movie style like perfectly.
Yeah, no kidding.
If you love his movies, you love listening to this kind of music because it's like kind of a little bit out there, but it's really well thought out.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, it is funny because they have done soundtracks. I thought I saw that they had done 5 soundtracks. I mean, More is a soundtrack, Obscured by Clouds is a soundtrack. Obviously, The Wall is as well. I don't know what the other ones are, but in any event, apparently, that's kind of in their
I just pictured
their
them with
wheelhouse,
like a 30-minute instrumental called Howl or something like that.
Yeah. Any other closing remarks? I think we're probably good here. I know that a little bit longer than our podcasts normally are, but this was a very interesting process again, because there's a lot of material, and again, what we do is we listen to every single song, and clearly in this case we had to listen to a lot of them more than once to come up with this. So we've kind of gone into depth. So I'll leave as well for those that like Floyd, or for even for the guys that we're talking to here for Cecil and Gord and Mauro. I mentioned Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking, which is Eric Clapton. There's another Roger Waters solo album called Amused to Death. He's got Jeff Beck playing guitar on that, and that's a great album. He's got 1 or 2 other ones that I'm not familiar with, that are so I won't comment on those, but I know he does have a couple. David Gilmour has his self-titled album is really good too, if you like David Gilmour and some of his work. His self-titled album has actually a song on there called "There's No Way Out of Here" that I loved when I heard that, and then Monster Magnet remade it, and the Monster Magnet version is actually really good as well. So anyway, so there's some solo stuff out there as well, and be sure to check out their live stuff. And it really brings a lot of this stuff to life. And Astronomy Domini is a great example of that. There's a version on the Pulse live. I think it's a 2-disc thing that you can find, and it's awesome. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. Sorry, go ahead.
Or I saw told you guys I saw Jerry Cantrell and Metallica cover that song. It was awesome. And Voivod does a good cover of that song as well.
Well, I was gonna
Good call.
That is a good call. I stumbled upon that.
but I'll say it again. That was the first that was the first song I listened to in this whole process, and I'm like, oh, what the hell is this? And I'm like, I even text you, I'm not gonna get that time back.
Yeah.
And I didn't listen to it again until today. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna listen to it again today, and I was listening to a completely different song. I'm like, not hating it anymore. I'm not the biggest fan, but I'm like, I get it. That's all.
Yeah, I do like it better live. The live stuff, in my opinion, is better. The first time I heard that song was actually the Voivod version. I didn't at that time know that it was even a Pink Floyd song, and I was listening to Pink Floyd a little bit at that time. So we'll leave with that. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, tell your friends, family, neighbors, coworkers about it. If you didn't like it, tell them anyway, because maybe they have better taste than you. So just, to make sure you don't miss an episode, subscribe to the Picks and Sticks podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, really anywhere else that you download your podcast from. Next episode, hold on to your top hat.
Oh, shit.
We're bringing you some Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
So make sure that you're subscribed and you don't miss that. So thanks again for listening. We really appreciate it. And until next time, see ya.
See you.
See ya.